Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. We have quite a lot of weather going on, so we'll go ahead and get right into it. We have a lot of watches and advisories in effect. So starting with the Alaska Range and the Deltana and Tanana Flats areas, we have a high wind watch in effect for Monday evening through Tuesday evening. That's going to be for wind gusts potentially up to 75 miles per hour. Now, those winds are going to be capable of bringing down trees as well as power lines and causing potential power outages. Those winds will also cause some issues in the passes for the Alaska Range, especially for high-profile vehicles. So keep an eye on that wind forecast if you have any plans to travel or be in the Alaska Range or Deltana and Tanana Flats areas Monday evening through Tuesday evening. For the south central and southwest portions of the state, we have a winter weather advisory in effect for the Bristol Bay area and inland portions of the southwestern portion of the state, including the area along the Kuskokwim River inland. So that's going to be in effect from Monday afternoon through Tuesday morning for snow. As we'll see in our service charts, we have a strong low pressure system that's going to be bringing lots of snow into the area. So that is a place where we could see some snow that creates some travel concerns for those areas. We also have a winter storm watch in effect for the western Susitna Valley associated with that same system. That's going to be for the potential for heavy snow Monday night into Tuesday. Now, with this system, we're going to be seeing upslope flow, and as that wind goes up a slope, it tends to wring out all of the moisture. So when we see upslope flow, we can see even heavier snow than areas that are not seeing upslope flow. So that's what's going to be bringing the potential for that heavy snow into the western Susitna Valley. For southeastern portions of the state, including the Panhandle, we have a flood advisory in effect right now through 9 p.m. this evening for the southern inner channels, including Ketchikan and Prince of Wales. For those locations, we are looking at the potential for upwards of 3 inches of rain within a 24-hour period ending this evening. So again, we are looking at the potential for minor flooding in poor drainage areas there. And that is in effect through 9 p.m. this evening. Now, as we look forward in time, we have a number of different watches that are going to be in effect for different portions of the Panhandle associated with that same system, bringing the wind and snow to the southern portions of the state. So we have a high wind watch that's going to be in effect for the Yakutat area and another one for the Sitka area. The one for the Yakutat area is going to be in effect for Monday night. And for the Sitka area, that high wind watch is in effect Monday night all the way into Tuesday morning. So keep an eye on the forecast for the Yakutat and Sitka areas as high winds may be headed your way. We also have a winter storm watch in effect for the Haines and Skagway areas, particularly those higher elevations along the Klondike Highway. There's the potential that there could be quite a lot of snow in those areas from Monday evening through Tuesday. And as we're going forward in time, we're going to see warmer air coming into the Panhandle starting Tuesday, and it's going to raise those snow levels quite a lot higher, but exactly how much higher is yet to be seen. So starting Tuesday morning and going all the way and through Wednesday night, we're going to have a flood watch in effect for the central Panhandle south to about Wrangell. That's going to be for heavy rain with that warm air coming in. It's going to be an atmospheric river event. And the big question is going to be, how high are those snow levels going to get? So if the snow levels don't get above the highest portion of the Klondike Highway there, above Skagway, and that area continues to see snow through this whole period, we could be measuring snow in feet for that area instead of inches. So certainly the winds, the rain, and the snow, something to keep an eye on over the next few days for the Panhandle, as well as much of the southern portion of the state. Looking at our satellite imagery, we can see a boundary coming into the Aleutians today. That's going to be out ahead of our next strong low pressure system. We can also see quite a lot in the way of clouds over the Panhandle. That's bringing some rain and snow showers today, as well as that heavier rain for those southern inner channels where that flood advisory is in effect. Over the interior, looking like we could see some snow, but also some sunny skies, particularly for the west coast. And looking at our surface map for today, we do see a weak and dissipating low pressure system over the south central area, bringing some snow showers and snow into the area today. We can see our rain showers and snow showers over the Panhandle as well. We've got a trough over the northwestern portion of the state. That's going to be bringing some breezy winds there, as well as further down the west coast. So we're expecting some freezing spray across the northern Bering Sea and southern Chukchi Sea today. In fact, that's going to last into the next couple of days. And we can see our strong low pressure system south of the Aleutians. That's going to be our next weather maker. So as we head into tonight, we see that low continuing to move closer, 959 millibars, so rather strong, with some strong winds heading into the Aleutians today. We'll continue to see some light snow over the interior, as well as portions of south central, and that heavier rain in the Panhandle starting to taper off into showers tonight. One area of concern will be the southwest coast, where we're looking at freezing fog tonight. And again, that freezing fog will be capable of making surfaces very slick as it creates just a real thin layer of ice on things. So something to be aware of if you are planning to be out and about tonight on the southwest coast. For Monday, we see that low pressure system. It's weakening a little bit, but it's still pretty strong at 963 millibars, coming right up into the Alaska Peninsula. That's going to be bringing winds as well as snow into the area. We have those winter weather advisories and winter storm watches and high wind watches in effect. That's associated with this system. So as we head into Tuesday, we see that system weakening some, but really what it's doing is spreading its impacts further north and east into the rest of the northern Gulf area, as well as the Panhandle. And we have some heavy rain indicators there, all the way from Prince William Sound along the coast down through the Panhandle. That's where we're going to be seeing that warmer air starting to come in and raise those snow levels. So at the lower elevations, we'll see plenty of rain, starting with an atmospheric river event. So for the Panhandle, that's when we have our flood watch starting for the central Panhandle down to about Wrangell. And looking at our temperatures starting Monday morning, looking quite cold across the interior of the state with negative single degree low temperatures for Monday morning. Somewhat more mild across the north slope, with even some temperatures into the positive single degrees with 2 degrees at Utqiagvik. Along the west coast, single digits above zero to the teens, and some 30s and 20s for the Aleutians. For the Panhandle, our warmest area of the state, we are looking at low temperatures from 30 to about 37 degrees. And looking at Monday afternoon, not a whole lot of warming going on across the interior north of the Alaska Range, as we'll see highs topping out in the negative single digits to positive single digits for that area, all the way north to the north slope. For the west coast, we are looking at high temperatures in the teens and 20s. And we're looking at some warmer air for the Aleutians, stretching all the way across the northern Gulf Coast through south central, where we're looking at 28 to 38 degrees there, and even high temperatures around 40 for the Panhandle. For Tuesday morning, probably the biggest difference is going to be for the panhandle itself, where those temperatures Tuesday morning aren't really going to be very much lower than the highs on Monday afternoon. That's due to all of that cloud cover and rain that's going to be moving into the area at that point. So low temperatures on Tuesday morning, still in the upper 30s to around 40 degrees for the panhandle. We can also see some of that warmer air making its way into the northern Gulf Coast, where we're looking at low temperatures around freezing to even just a little bit above freezing there. Even a little bit warmer across portions of the interior, where we're looking at negative single digits to even some positive single digits. We've got 2 degrees Tuesday morning at Fairbanks. For Tuesday afternoon, with that warm air moving in, we can definitely see the difference for areas near the Gulf Coast, with temperatures in the mid 30s to even some mid 40s for South Central and the Kenai Peninsula, and temperatures approaching 50 degrees for the panhandle on Tuesday afternoon.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Now for a look at your aviation weather. Starting with flying weather on Monday morning, we're looking at a large patch of IFR conditions over the western Brooks Range, as well as IFR conditions through much of the eastern Aleutians and the southern Alaska Peninsula. Also some spotty IFR conditions over portions of south central and southeastern portions of the state. For Monday afternoon, we have those IFR conditions spreading from the eastern Aleutians all the way up into the northern Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle, as we have a low pressure system spreading rain and a front spreading rain up through that area. For the mainland portion of the state, we'll see MVFR conditions Monday afternoon along the north slope, but a lot of VFR conditions over the central portion of the mainland. Tuesday morning, we'll still see those IFR conditions along the northern Gulf Coast, spreading inland northward a little bit more into southeast, as well as north to about the southern slopes of the Alaska Range. Also IFR conditions for pretty much the entirety of the Panhandle on Tuesday morning. For Tuesday afternoon, not a whole lot of change for the Gulf Coast, still IFR conditions for the entire coast, but we're looking at it spreading even further northward into the interior of the state, up the Yukon River and to the southern slopes of the Central Brooks Range for Tuesday afternoon. Pass conditions on Monday, Anaktuvuk Pass expected to be MVFR, as well as Adigan Pass MVFR on Monday. Lake Clark and Merrill passes both IFR on Monday. Rainy Pass MVFR, but we're looking at IFR conditions along that east entrance for Rainy Pass. Windy Pass MVFR on Monday, as well as Isabel Pass MVFR on Monday. Mentasta Pass actually looking VFR for Monday. Tanita Pass MVFR and Portage Pass MVFR. And Chilkoot and White Passes both starting out Monday morning IFR, but improving to MVFR Monday afternoon. For freezing levels on Monday morning, we are looking at some warm air coming up into the Gulf, but in general, everybody's got a surface freezing level. With the exception of Kodiak Island, we've got a secondary freezing level at about 2,000 feet there, and portions of the southern Panhandle, 2,000 foot freezing level there as well. For icing on Monday, for much of the mainland, we're looking at some isolated moderate icing above about 2,000 feet. For the Aleutians, we're looking at isolated moderate icing above 4,000 feet. We'll also see some isolated moderate icing above 4,000 feet for the Panhandle on Monday. For our jet stream on Monday, we're looking at our main jet arcing up into the Gulf. So 120 to 140 knots out of the southwest on the western side of the Gulf, and 125 to 135 knots out of the northwest on the northeastern side of the Gulf. We've also got some secondary winds outside of that, 65 to 85 knots over the southern portion of the state on the outside of that jet. For 9,000 foot winds, we have our strongest winds associated with low pressure down south of the Alaska Peninsula. It's going to be 60 knots at our highest winds out of the southwest, out in the middle of the Gulf. Closer to land, we are looking at about 35 knots out of the northwest for much of the Aleutians, and 20 to 30 knots over the central mainland out of the southwest For the Panhandle, 40 to 45 knots out of the west and southwest at 9,000 feet on Monday. And at 3,000 feet, we see the same pattern. We've got low pressure centered south of the Alaska Peninsula, almost off the map at this point, with our counterclockwise winds circulating around that low pressure system. Strongest winds on the east side, so those are going to be about 70 knots out of the south in the middle of the Gulf. As we wrap around into the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, we're looking at 50 to 55 knots out of the east and northeast. Over the mainland, we're looking at fairly light winds around 5 knots for the southern half of the state, a small peak near the Brooks Range about 20 knots, and then North Slope 30 knots out of the east, and the Panhandle looking like 25 to 30 knots, especially for the immediate coastal areas. That's going to be out of the west. For turbulence on Monday, we do have isolated severe turbulence expected all the way from the eastern Aleutians up through the Alaska Peninsula and along the Gulf Coast into the Kenai Peninsula and the Prince William Sound area. So definitely check in on turbulence if you have any plans to fly on Monday. Stay tuned for more Alaska weather after this.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite. Coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. It was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, it's good for the ego, of course, it's good for the business, But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside of you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up, your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at your marine forecast, starting with the sea ice edge. Over the last 24 hours even, we've seen quite a lot of ice growth along the west coast all the way down into the Bristol Bay area. We expect that trend to continue as easterly and northerly winds generally remain in place. For marine conditions for southeast on Monday, we are looking at some strong winds over the Gulf, particularly for the North Gulf, with 30 to 40 knot winds there out of the south and southeast. Some pretty good gusts on the inside waterways as well, with gusts up to 35 knots for the northern and central inside waterways on Monday, with seas 14 to 15 feet for the Gulf and just 4 to 7 feet for those inside waterways. For Tuesday, we'll see the winds shift further south in the Gulf, so out of the south, 40 to 45 knots for the southern Gulf Coast, and we're looking at 15 to 30 knots out of the south for the inside waterways. Those seas are going to get very big for the Gulf, 20 to 28 feet, so definitely a time to be well aware of the weather if you are planning to be out in a boat at all. For Monday in South Central, we'll see our strong winds with that system moving into the area, 40 to 50 knots out of the southeast and east for the Gulf, with 13 to 20 foot seas. Strong winds also for Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound, 25 to 45 knots out of the northeast and east. And for Tuesday, those winds come down quite a bit, 15 to 25 knots generally out of the south. Seas slower to come down though, 16 to 20 feet still over the Gulf on Tuesday. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas, we'll see our strongest winds on Monday as that system comes up into the area, 40 to 50 knots out of the east, a little bit southeast and a little bit northeast, but generally east on Monday. On Tuesday, though, our winds start to come down 15 to about 30 knots, although we do still have a peak of about 35 knots out of the north, just north of the Sand Point area. For Monday across the Aleutian chain, this is where we'll see our strongest winds here as well, 40 to 45 knots out of the north and northeast for the central and eastern Aleutians, just 20 to 30 knots out of the north for the western Aleutians though. And with those highest winds, we'll also see the highest seas ranging anywhere from 19 to 29 feet across the central and eastern Aleutians on Monday. Both winds and seas coming down on Tuesday. We'll still see some potential for gales in the far eastern Aleutians, 35 knots out of the north, but decreasing as we head further west, 10 to 25 knots out of the north for the rest of the Aleutians on Tuesday. For Monday along the west coast, we'll see some strong winds, 30 to 40 knots across much of the west coast. Those winds are going to be out of the north, although 20 knots out of the north for Norton Sound. And going into Tuesday, not a whole lot of change with those winds. Still some strong winds, 30 to 35 knots out of the north, even 25 knots still in Norton Sound, with seas ranging from about 10 to 13 feet across the Bering. For the Arctic coast on Monday, we have winds 15 to 20 knots for the North Slope and increasing to about 30 knots on either side of the Bering Strait. Those are going to be out of the north with 4 to 7 foot seas. And on Tuesday, we'll see those winds come up even a little bit more, 20 to 35 knots across the Chukchi Sea, with 35 knots out of the north coming out of the Bering Strait. Recapping our weather for tonight, we have freezing spray possible with those breezy conditions in the northern Bering and the southern Chukchi Sea, that is, and we can see our next strong low pressure system moving up into the area south of the Aleutians. So as we head into Monday, that low continues its trek north to the Alaska Peninsula, 963 millibars, pretty potent low at that. That's going to be bringing that snow into the southwestern portion of the state where we have winter weather advisories and winter weather watches in effect. We also have that high wind watch in effect across the Alaska range. And as we head into Tuesday, all of that rain and snow is going to push into the Panhandle, where we'll see some warming conditions for the potential for flooding for the lower terrain. We've got those winds potential for Yakutat and Sitka, and then keeping an eye on the Klondike Highway and how much snow the higher terrain there will see.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.